Hello and welcome into another episode of Lockdown Wolves. Today on the show, an update on Karl-Anthony Towns' health and apparently a pretty serious health scare that kept him out of the first week of training camp. Where that stands now, a Timberwolves discussion on TheRinger.com, an article talking about Rudy Gobert's fit in the Wolves offense, and some ideas there that have echoed something we've talked about on the program. So I want to cover that. And then also tonight, Tuesday night, the first Timberwolves preseason game against the Miami Heat. We'll preview that, take a peek ahead of the next week as we inch closer to regular season basketball. It's all coming up. Joe, welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Tuesday. Happy preseason opener game day. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, Locked On Wolves is free and available everywhere you listen to podcasts. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite podcast platforms. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T Wolves and my account, which is at Beecken. And that's with two B's, two E's, CKEN. Also, an exciting announcement. We just announced this yesterday for the first time. Locked On Wolves, along with all the other Minnesota Lockdown podcasts, are now available on Roku and Amazon Fire TV as part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. More great local sports coverage 24/7, and it's absolutely free. You can download it's a dedicated app, the Locked On Sports Minnesota app today on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. Please do that. It would be awesome if you help support the app rollout. And you can watch this podcast right there in that app. So please do just that. All right. Today is the first preseason game. We'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of the show. One of the players who will not be playing in the game today is Karl-Anthony Towns and also Rudy Gobert. Rudy's not playing, of course, because he played in the Eurobasket and really was playing up until like less than 2 weeks ago. So he's getting an additional breather, which makes a ton of sense. A lot of miles that he put on himself this offseason playing overseas, and understandably so. It is what it is, but definitely makes sense to get him some rest at the start of training camp. And also a lot of, what needs to get worked out is Rudy's pairing with Karl-Anthony Towns. And Towns is still out. Of course, he was not at media day last week. At the time, we just knew it was undisclosed non-COVID illness. He did not practice all last week. The first time he was seen publicly was Saturday when he was at the open practice on Saturday at Target Center. He was there with the team, and he spoke on Monday. There was I mentioned this on Monday's show. I think it was on Sunday it was released, or I should say Jordan Woods, Towns' fiance, posted on, I think, Instagram that he had been hospitalized. Towns spoke on Monday and confirmed that he had been in the hospital. And, it's a little dicey. Towns didn't lead on to too much. So I'll read, I guess, what John Krasinski reported at The Athletic. John says Towns didn't go into this is on Twitter, didn't go into deep detail about what he's been through, but he said he only started walking around again after his non-COVID illness on Saturday, which is when he was at Target Center with the team. He's down to 231 pounds. Typically, Towns is listed around 250 pounds, says he feels good to be back on the court and is ramping up. And he confirmed the hospitalization thing. Brian Windhorst at ESPN reported late on Monday that there was it was some sort of a throat infection. That's all we have. It doesn't really matter. The most important thing is that he's feeling better. That physically he's just improving, and there's no danger. Obviously, he's out of the hospital. But then, the secondary piece of that is the conditioning and working back up, getting back into basketball shape. Presumably he, was in great shape this offseason. We know that he had the various, I think, stem cell injections back at the end of the Timberwolves season. So like in May, I believe one of his fingers, one of his knees, I think both wrists maybe, or maybe it was one wrist and both knees, but multiple injections to try and help with some of the pain that he's had the last several years. And remember, this is a player, we talked about this on Monday's show. Cat played in all 82 games in the first 3 seasons of his NBA career, only missed 5 games in season 4. And that was, most of those were after he had a concussion for being in a car wreck. And didn't really start missing time until the first part of the first COVID shortened season. So back in winter of 2019, prior to when COVID actually happened, Towns had the knee and the wrist injury. He fell on his wrist. The wrist was early that season, and then the knee, I guess, was down closer to when COVID actually happened. And the following year, he dealt a little bit with some knee issues too. And then last year there was a finger issue, the wrist issue cropped back up. So hopefully Towns is able to get himself right and get healthy. That's obviously, the most important thing is whatever this strange illness was. But preseason game Tuesday, we'll talk more about that later. Some more preseason games coming up soon. Actually, the Wolves have 2 preseason games that are nationally televised, oddly enough. So we'll see if Towns is able to get back. I'm sure that they'd want to get him minutes in at least 1, maybe 2 preseason games, but that may be pushing it. I mean, we're only a couple of weeks out from regular season basketball. So, I think maybe it's just 1 preseason game and then a slower kind of ramp up to what would be considered more normal regular season per game minutes for Towns. So that's, we'll see what that looks like, but don't be shocked if it's pretty gradual. And same with Rudy. I mean, Rudy's in shape, right? He's been playing basketball competitively on the floor basically all offseason. So it's not a getting into shape thing for Rudy. It's an acclimation to teammates, to Chris Finch, to the way the Wolves want to play this season. So it's a little bit of a different story when it comes to Rudy. But we'll keep an eye on that. It wouldn't surprise me if Rudy maybe plays in 2 preseason games and Towns plays in 1, something to that effect. So we'll talk about that on the show as more news becomes available. But don't expect Rudy, don't expect Cat to play on Tuesday night against the Miami Heat. All right. Next, I want to talk a little Wolves offense. Obviously, we've done that quite a bit here this offseason, but The Ringer, Kevin O'Connor at theringer.com had an article where he talked pretty extensively about Gobert's fit within the Timberwolves offense, and it actually sounded a lot like some of the things we've talked about in the show, but added some good detail and color to that. So I want to cover that here next. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at Built Bar. If you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you're absolutely depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There's a new flavor. Delicious, indulgent cookie dough. Covered in chocolate, Built has done it once again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite cookie dough chunk puffs. They have a light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it, and even better, it's healthy for you. Cookie dough chunk puffs are just 160 calories. They have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. You can run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It'll be the perfect treat, or you can find a really good hiding place and simply hoard them for yourself. Like all Built bars, the new cookie dough chunk puff is covered in 100% real chocolate. That means they're healthy and they're tasty. Chocolate-covered cookie dough with a light, fluffy texture. What's great about Built is that all of their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff. Whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or simply need a quick bite, Built is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. No joke. Ditch the calories, ditch the fat, and ditch the sugar. Grab yourself a Built bar. Go to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON15. Don't forget the on. That changed. LOCKEDON15. And get 15% off your order. Again, Built.com. Promo code LOCKEDON15. Thanks again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. Now, make sure you check out the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview starting Monday, October 10th. That's this coming Monday. A 6-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NBA season. The local team experts and the NBA insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey all combined into one Ultimate NBA Preview. Starting October 10th, search for Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. A bit of a preview, I guess, slash spoiler. Not really a spoiler, but I'll be on an episode with the hosts from Locked On Grizzlies, Raptors, Cavaliers, Pelicans. Is that it? I think that's it. Raptors, yeah, I think that's it. The On the Rise group, basically teams that have either returning stars or new stars. Obviously in the case of Zion, it would be the former, and then new budding stars in Anthony Edwards, Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes in the case of the Raptors, and the Grizzlies are really because of Ja. So these are all teams that are kind of up and coming. Memphis, of course, was the 2 seed last year, but basically like not the teams that are expected to be the favorite, the Warriors, the Sixers, but kind of that next tier down teams that are going to jump into that contender realm or would like to. And it was a really, really fun conversation with those guys. So pay attention when that comes out here next Monday, the 10th. Okay. Let's talk about the article over at theringer.com. Again, this is by Kevin O'Connor, their main basketball writer. And he published an article that posted, I guess this would have been Monday morning, entitled 7 NBA players who could shape the 2022-23 season. Kind of an ambiguous title. Like, obviously, I mean, whatever. Generic title. It's fine. The third point in is all about Rudy Gobert. I want to read a couple excerpts regarding Rudy. He talks about, it's actually kind of funny. He starts the blurb by saying, Gobert's offensive limitations are undeniable. He can't dribble, he can't shoot, and he can't create for others, at least not with the ball in his hands. But then he goes on to talk about how he's the best screener in the NBA. The Timberwolves had the 7th least on-ball screens, or another way of saying that would be they were 23rd in off-ball screens last year as a team, which surprised me a little bit. Talks about how he can free up shooters, he can free up cutters, and be really good in the pick and roll. I've talked about this actually on the lockdown, the roundtable here for the season preview. I talked pretty extensively about the pick and roll opportunities are going to go up within the Wolves offense because of Rudy. But O'Connor goes on to say that Gobert with Minnesota, his offensive contributions could be more apparent than ever. The Jazz had Donovan Mitchell, who is a somewhat limited creator, and a past his prime Mike Conley running the show. Neither possesses D'Angelo Russell's playmaking chops or Anthony Edwards' brute force attacking style. Gobert is the best screener in basketball. He will make his new teammates' lives easier, and he'll give them a lob target like they've never had in their careers. All right. I've talked about this extensively on the show, both on the defensive end of the floor. You just look at perimeter defense. Donovan Mitchell's not a good defender. Mike Conley's past his prime defensively. Go on down the list there in Utah, and they did not have good perimeter defenders. The Wolves have really the only minus perimeter defender in the rotation is Jalen Noel, and D'Lo's, probably still a minus, although he's improved a little. But Ant's very good. Jade McDaniels is very good. Jared McLaughlin's at least competitive, albeit undersized. Taurean Prince is a good defender. You go up to the forwards and you got Kyle Anderson. Mostly you've got good defenders at this point for Minnesota, far better than what Utah had. And then offensively, as KOC at the Ringer points out, Donovan Mitchell's limited as a creator and Mike Conley is past his prime. And now you've got Ant, you've got D'Lo. I would even, I'd throw Jalen Noel in that category. I'd throw Kyle Anderson in there as somebody who, he's obviously not Donovan Mitchell, but Kyle Anderson can initiate offense and was pretty darn good when he did that for Memphis last season off the bench. And then KOC goes on to say Towns has been the primary screener for the Wolves, and now with Gobert, they'll just use Towns less in screening actions. He could be a catch and shoot guy. And there's some danger here. I know some of the immediate reaction from folks around the media sphere related to this Gobert acquisition was, oh, now Towns will be a catch and shoot 3-point shooter. That's all he's going to do. Okay, fine. Well, he's a 41% 3-point shooter, and he's going to score, he's going to make 5 threes a game if that's what this is. But as we saw last year, if teams crowd him on the perimeter and he's playing off of, say, an Ant Rudy pick and roll or a D'Lo Rudy pick and roll, then he's open for a 3-point shot. If he gets crowded, if teams overplay that kick out, then he could just drive and or catch and drive to the basket like he did so often last year. That's where he did so much of his damage. It wasn't on 3-pointers. The 3-point rate was down last season for Towns, but the free throw rate was up because he was going to the basket more often. He was drawing fouls. He was being more aggressive off the dribble because these slow fives and undersized fours that are trying to guard Cat can't guard him when he plays bully ball. And so then as O'Connor goes on to say, if Russell's handling the ball, Cat should receive countless open catch and shoot 3-point chances, either spotting up for the key from the top of the key or even in the corner. Expect Gobert's presence to unleash Cat on offense. He goes on to say, no matter how you feel about the high price they paid, D'Lo's life will be easier. Ant will have more around him, and the Wolves are in position to be a playoff force for years to come. So he underlines a lot of things I've talked about pretty extensively on the show. And again, next week when the Odyssey, the preview for the On the Rise teams comes out, I talked about this quite a bit. The increase in pick and rolls in the Wolves offense, there certainly will be one. Towns will be in it less. Rudy will be in it a ton. Towns will be open as a catch and shoot guy. He'll be open as a, as a as a second option essentially out of the pick and roll. And a lot of times it's going to be Ant initiating pick and roll. Although I think the best, the optimal, and this won't be every time down the court, you've obviously got to switch it up, but imagine an Ant to Rudy Gobert pick and roll where you've got Anthony Edwards coming downhill at you, ready to dunk on you, ready to shoot a step back three. Um, or you've got Rudy, who's arguably the best roller in the entire league, that just the roll gravity pulling the entire defense into the paint. If you don't like that, he could kick it out to D'Angelo Russell for a secondary attack. D'Lo's a good catch and shoot 3-point shooter as well. Or you got Karl-Anthony Towns, who's only one of the premier shooters in basketball, the best big man shooter of all time, one of the best offensive talents in the entire NBA. It's a pretty dynamic five-some. And Jaden McDaniels is far and away the fifth option. But, I mean, he's not far away from league average on catch and shoot threes. I mean, he's got a little bit of work to do. He's obviously ultra athletic. We've seen him dunk on people. He's learning to put the ball on the floor and attack and distribute. This is a really dynamic offense. And having Gobert, he's replacing Jared Vanderbilt, right? And Jared Vanderbilt was a complete non-factor offensively. He wasn't even a very good offensive rebounder. For as good as he was on the defensive glass, Vanderbilt was undersized. He couldn't dribble. Or I shouldn't say that. He could dribble and was actually pretty good in the open floor, but he wasn't going to attack off the dribble in the half court. I guess is a better, more accurate way to say that. He was a clear minus offensively for the Wolves, right? Rudy Gobert is we know what we're getting with Rudy. One of the league's best rollers, a very strong lob threat, a good offensive rebounder, 70+% on the rim. And yeah, there's limitations, as O'Connor writes, and as I talked about, at the top of the segment. But those limitations are far less than Jared Vanderbilt. Rudy Gobert has been an all-star multiple times for a reason, because he can have a positive impact on the offensive end of the floor. So I am so excited for this fit. And the more that I've kind of looked at the numbers and looked at exactly how I think this will work in the half court, there's just so many possibilities for Chris Finch. And he's got to be absolutely licking his chops at the all the possibilities, right? The horn sets that he likes to run anyway, with both Towns and Rudy, with Ant attacking, with D'Lo attacking. There's just so many options within this offense. It's going to be a ton of fun. Now, of course, we have to wait at least a week, probably a couple more weeks to see it, with Rudy and Cat both sitting out as of now. But looking forward to seeing how that all shakes out. All right, let's close the show by doing a quick Wolves Heat preview, a peek ahead at the upcoming days here. As preseason gets underway. A lot of preseason action actually went down on Monday around the league. So we'll take a peek ahead at the Wolves schedule here next. All right, the Timberwolves take on the Miami Heat on Tuesday night. It's actually in Miami at FTX Arena. This is it's like a 10-day road trip for the Wolves for preseason. Not actually sure if Towns is traveling with the team or not. It sounds like he is, but obviously not playing. Rudy's not playing. The Wolves, the tip-off is at 6:30 Central Time, and it is on Bally Sports North Plus, I believe it is, in the Twin Cities, so you should be able to watch it if you have access to that channel. But no injury report out for Miami. We just know Cat's not played. Rudy's not playing for the Wolves. I mean, no, it's the first preseason game. So, really unclear who actually will take the court for Miami. Their team looks pretty familiar to last year. The big subtraction for them is PJ Tucker, who moved on in free agency. Of course, they bring back a lot of the same rotation guys from a year ago. Sixth man of the year, Tyler Hero, had a nice season after a disappointing second year, the prior season, a disappointing kind of sophomore campaign after that Heat finals run when he was a rookie in the bubble, the whole thing. Disappointing second year. Last year, good year for Hero. He becomes sixth man of the year, scoring 20+ points per game. And then you've got some other nice surprises for them as well that saw heavy minutes. Oladipo's back in Miami this season. Of course, Kyle Lowry, Bam Adebayo, of course, Jimmy Butler. It's going to be a very similar looking Heat team. They're going to be likely a 50+ win team once again. They won 53 games last year, lost in 7 to Boston in the conference finals. The Wolves have actually played Miami pretty well the last couple of seasons. Not that matters a whole lot in preseason, but it's an interesting matchup for Minnesota, because if Ant can check Jimmy Butler and you could just be physical with Bam Adebayo, which is easier said than done, obviously. They don't have enough size. Like, we're going to be saying this about most matchups this season. if Rudy and Cat were both playing, who has enough size to check this Timberwolves lineup? I mean, you talk about the Cavs with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and maybe a couple other teams. A team like Toronto may have the length to be able to do it. The Knicks have a pretty big front court. There's a handful of teams, maybe Phoenix that could kind of check both a Rudy and a Cat front court as best as possible. But Miami's not necessarily one of those teams, right? It's pretty much Bam Adebayo. They've got Nikola Jovic, the rookie. I don't know how much time he's going to see. But they've got some other guys on the roster. I guess Dwayne Dedman's there as well. But it's not. A lot of teams are going to have a tough time matching up with this Wolves front court this season, and that, of course, is by design by the Timberwolves front office, Tim Connolly, and also by Chris Finch. Again, no Rudy, no Cat in this game, so not as relevant here. Impossible to really preview accurately, what a preseason game is going to look like. It's just going to be fun to see live Timberwolves basketball against a real opponent. Even if there is no Cat, we'll get to see Anthony Edwards, hopefully D'Angelo Russell, some of those guys on the floor. The rest of the week for the Wolves, they do play Thursday in LA. It's weird. They're in Miami, then they travel all the way to the West Coast to play the Lakers. It's a 9 p.m. Central tip on Thursday the 6th. That's on ESPN. And then they spend 3 days in LA before playing the Clippers on Sunday the 9th. And that's a 9:30 p.m. tip. I believe that's on Bally Sports North Extra in the Twin Cities. And then there's another ESPN game not long after that. That's also the Lakers, and it's next Wednesday the 12th. They play the Lakers on ESPN once again. I should actually clarify this Thursday, if they don't fly all the way to LA to play the Lakers, it's a neutral site game in Vegas. So I guess almost all the way to LA. And then they actually do go to Staples to play the Lakers the following week. So they don't get back home until their home game against Brooklyn a week from Friday. Friday, October 14th is their only home preseason game. So yeah, 2 ESPN games, 3 road games, technically 4 road games with 1 at a neutral site. I'm just completely guessing now. I don't think we see Cat at all this week. We probably don't see Rudy. Maybe we see Rudy on Sunday at the Clippers, and then maybe Cat's first game is next Wednesday. So roughly, 8 days from now at the Lakers on ESPN. I would say that's probably what the Wolves would shoot for to get him at least 1 game in, and possibly 2 if he plays at home against Brooklyn on Friday the 14th. And then the first regular season game is that next week. It's Tuesday the 18th. Excuse me. No, it's Wednesday the 19th at home against the Oklahoma City Thunder. So 2 weeks from Wednesday is the Timberwolves' first regular season game. This week we will do post-game pods, but they will post the following morning. So Wednesday show, early Wednesday, will be a post-game pod from Tuesday night's game. Same thing on Friday. Friday show will be a post-game pod following Thursday night's game. Between the Wolves and Lakers. So it won't post immediately following. We won't be doing postcasts yet either, but those will be coming here soon. So stay tuned for that. All right. That's all I have for you today here on the show. Thanks again for listening to the Locked On Wolves podcast. And thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, you can follow the show. It's free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. A reminder that Locked On Wolves and all other Locked On Minnesota podcasts are now available on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. More great local sports coverage 24/7, and it's absolutely free. Again, download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app today on Roku and on Amazon Fire TV. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on the biggest stories. Now make your second listen the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Show. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 daily fantasy basketball show on the planet. It's free and available wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.